Hi there. So in this video, we're going to expand our discussion of factoring, and we will specifically be looking at factoring trinomials in this particular section. We're going to look at first on the front page here, factoring trinomials that have a leading coefficient of 1, meaning the number in front of x squared there is a 1. So there are a couple of steps here to think about whenever you're factoring trinomials. I'll always ask you, is it in descending order? If it is, go on to the next step. If not, put it in descending order. You put it in descending order according to your exponents. So like if I come down here to example 2, this one is already in descending order because it goes from 2, 1, no x's. Just looking at my exponents, okay? Then you ask yourself, does it have a common factor? If it does, pull it out. If not, go on to the third step. And the third step is to use guess and check to solve. There's multiple ways to factor. This is just will be the way that will be presented here in this video. And it should be noted that all of your answers, whenever you factor, can always be checked by foiling your final answer. And when you foil your final answer, you should get the original problem that you started with. Okay? All right, so let's scoot on down here to example 2, and I'm going to do the top row with you and let you pause the video and try the bottom row. The material that we're talking about here in this section is so important, not only for this class, but also for moving forward into Math 171 and even beyond that class. You will see factoring continue to pop up, so you want to be sure that you're proficient with that, and if not, go see your instructor, go to the math lab, find tools and resources, and ask for additional practice so that you can get better with factoring. Okay. All right. So with that said, let's dive on in here to example. I have it here as example 2, but this really is it's our first example, so it should be written as example 1 here. All right. So it's in descending order, as I already said. These three terms, they do not have a common factor, so I am ready to start with my guess and check. And factoring is like undoing the FOIL. Okay, so in the first spots, we always ask ourselves, what do you multiply times itself to get x squared? So the only thing you can multiply times itself to get x squared, x times x. So that's what goes in the first spots. Then in the last spots, we ask ourselves, what can we multiply to get 15 that when added or subtracted would give us 8? So think about, there's only two ways to multiply to give you 15. You've got 1 times 15 and 3 times 5. So then you want to think, okay, well, if you add or subtract, could you get 8 with either one of those? And hopefully you agree, yep, with 3 and 5, if I add those, I could get 8. So I'm going to put a 3 and a 5. In this case, you could put the 5 in the front and the 3 in the back. It would not matter. All right, here's how I like to show my work on these. I always check my outside and inside because I'm trying to get this middle term here of 8x. So on the outside, x times 5, 5x. Inside, 3 times x, 3x. My goal is that middle term of 8x. I can get that by making both of those positive. And so I put 2 plus signs there. And then I do a last double check at the end. 3 times 5 gives me 15. Okay. And like I said at the very beginning, you can FOIL now this answer. So this is your answer. X plus 3 times x plus 5. That is the fully factored form of that given polynomial. Okay. So if we FOIL that, we would get the x squared plus 8x plus 15. Okay. Let's move over to B. Let's do another one here together. Okay. What do all three of those terms have in common? And I should say, I'd go back up from there. It's in descending order, right? X squared, x, no x's. Okay. So it does. Hopefully you agree. All of these terms have a 2 in common. So I'm going to factor out that 2. Write what I have left over. Now I'm going to move to my guess and check. The only way to multiply to give you x squared, x and x. Now you got a couple of ways again here again to multiply to give you 4. You've got 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. But you're trying to get a 5 in the center. So if I've got 1 times 4 and 2 times 2, which one of those, if you add or subtract, can be able to get you to a 5? And hopefully you agree. The only way I'm going to be able to get to 5, adding and subtracting, would be with 1 and 4. So I'm going to put a 1 and a 4. Again, you check your outside and inside. So on the outside, x times 4, it's giving me 4x. Inside, 1 times x, it's giving me 1x. My goal this time is a negative 5x. Okay, so now you ask yourself, well, what kind of signs then do I need on that 4 and 1 to get a negative 5? And if you just make your 4 negative, then think about it, you've got negative 4 plus 1, that'd give you negative 3. You're going to end up having to make them both negative, right? Negative 4 and negative 1 would combine and give you negative 5. So minus minus. And then do your last double check at the end. Negative 1 times negative 4, sure enough, gives you that positive 4. So final answer here, 2 parentheses x minus 1 times x minus 4. If you have these two swapped and say x minus 4 and then x minus 1, perfectly fine. In fact, that's how I wrote it on the solution key. All right, let's move over to letter C here. Letter C, hopefully you notice this is not in descending order. So that's the first thing I want to do is put it in descending order. So I'm going to have x squared minus 5x minus 24. So I've got 2x's, 1x, no x. Okay. All right, so now go to my guess and check. The only way to multiply to give me x squared, x and x. I want to think about ways to multiply to give me 24. That add or subtract to give me 5. So think about ways to multiply to give you 24. You got 1 times 24, 2 times 12. That's not helping me. 3 times 8. That would work. 3 and 8 could give me a 5. All right, so let's do that. 3 and 8. So now on the outside, I have 8 times x, so 8x. Inside, 3 times x, 3x. My goal is a negative 5x. So in order to get a negative 5 out of those two numbers, which one needs to be negative? Hopefully you agree, it's got to be that 8. So minus on the 8, positive on the 3. Check yourself. Positive 3 times negative 8, sure enough, gives me negative 24. And there's my final answer. I'm not going to rewrite it that time. Okay? Again, please pause the video. Try those bottom three. Check yourself by the solution key. All right. On the next page, we're going to step it up a notch in that the number in front of you're going to have a number in front of your x squared. It's going to be something other than 1, okay? But still the same process. It still has the same process in order to solve these and to factor. You're still going to put it in descending order. You're still going to ask yourself if it has a common factor. I'm going to talk you through those last 3 steps, demonstrate it. Okay, so let's flip it over. I'm going to do the left column with you and let you try the right column. All right. It says factor each trinomial here. And again, even with these, you can still at the end check yourself by foiling. All right. So I'm in descending order. So 2, 1, no x's. And these 3 terms do not have anything in common. So I'm ready to go to my guess and check. All right. So if it goes in the first spot, what's the only way to multiply to give you 3? Hopefully you agree that's 3 and 1. So it would be here in this case 3x times x. Now from here, this is where the guess and check, and you might need a big eraser, starts coming into play. You ask yourself, okay, what's the most common way to multiply to give you 20? I mean, you know, there's several ways, right? We got 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5. Those are our several ways. Several ways to multiply to give us 20. Usually, not always, but a lot of times, if you just kind of split it down the middle, the most common way to multiply to give you 20, I say 4 times 5, okay? I'm going to purposely put this in the wrong spot to begin with, so you know you might not want to. You might just want to watch me here at the very beginning, just so that you can see the guess and check process, because how this page is going to step it up a notch. So let me put the 4 in the front and 5 in the back. Here's how this steps it up, because whatever we put in that back spot is going to get multiplied by 3 now. So now I have 3x times 5. That's giving me 15x. Inside 4 times x. That's 4x. And my goal this time is I'm trying to get a 7x. Is there any way with 15 and 4 I'm going to be able to get 7? Definitely not. But what that doesn't mean that 5 and 4 are wrong. What it means though is swap it before you completely scrap it. Let's put now the 5 in the front and the 4 in the back. And so now when I check my outside and inside, on the outside I have 12x, and on the inside I have 5x. Yep, my goal is still that 7x. I can get that this time, so I'm just going to cross that off. I can get that 7x. Which one needs to be negative? That 5 would need to be negative, right? 12 take away 5 would give you 7. So over here, this is where I'm getting my 5, so the minus sign goes in front of where you're getting it. The 12 needs to be positive. 3 times 4, this is where I'm getting 12, so I put the positive sign there. Do the last double check at the end. Negative 5 times 4, that gives me negative 20. Final answer. So again, so this, I'll just box this in. These 2 parentheses here, that is your final answer. 3x minus 5 times x plus 4. All right, let's move down to letter C. I'm in descending order. X squared, x, no x's. Does it have a common factor? It doesn't. All right, so then I'm ready to go to my guess and check. The only way to multiply to give you 5x squared? 5x times x. Okay. You've got two ways to multiply to give you 6. 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. Now, in this one, think about you're trying to get 31 on that middle term, okay? So you've got to get a really big number. So this time, if I start using my 2 and 3, I'm not going to get really big numbers. Like I'm going to get 15 and I'm going to get a 10. But if I use my 6 and 1, think about if I put that 6 in the back and 1 in the front. Look what happens. 6 in the back, multiplying your outside. 5 times 6, that gives me 30x. Inside, 1 times x, gives me 1x. My goal is a negative 31x, so I can get negative 31 out of 30 and 1. I'd have to make them both negative, so minus minus. And then do your last double check at the end. Negative 1 times negative 6 gives you that positive 6. Okay, and that would be our final answer. All right, let's move on down to letter E here. Those three terms, I'm in descending order, but they all three have something in common. What do they all have in common? We agree they all have a 2 in common. So let's pull out that 2, write what I have left over. So essentially I'm dividing everything by 2. So that's what, 18x squared. 2 times 9 will give me 18. 2 times 2 gives me 4. Okay. So now from here, I'm going to bring down this 2. Ready to do my guess and check. We got several options here. Ways to multiply to give us 18. So this is where it definitely, like I said, it steps up a notch. I would, I personally, like I said, I usually think about what's the most common way to get me 18. Typically myself, I think of 6 times 3 as opposed to 9 times 2. Okay. So I'm going to, and a lot of times usually it's that split down the middle. So I'm going to go with 6x and 3x. In the back, the only way to multiply to give you 2, 1 and 2. All right, so let's say I put 2 in the front and 1 in the back. Okay, so let's do check outside and inside. Outside, I have 6x times 1, gives me 6x. Inside, I get another 6x, 2 times 3. Well, out of 6 and 6, my goal, I'm trying to get a negative 9x. Right, that's my middle term. That's what I'm trying to get. I'm not going to be able to get that. But again, don't completely scrap it yet. Swap the 2 and 1. So let's put 2 in the back, 1 in the front. Okay, so now check your outside. So 6x times 2, that's 12x. I will mark that off now. Inside, 1 times 3 gives me 3x. My goal is at negative 9x still. I can get negative 9 this time. Which one needs to be negative? It'd be your 12. So then ask yourself, where are you getting 12? I'm getting 12 when I multiply 6 times 2. So that's where the minus sign goes in front of where you're getting that. So I'm getting 6 times 2 is 12 there, minus sign in front of there. 3 needs to be positive. Middle here, this is where I'm getting 3s, and plus sign in front of that. And then this would be your final answer. Keeping that 2 on the outside. Okay. Please pause the video, try that right-hand side. And again, if you're still struggling with factoring, go see your instructor. Okay. All right, so now let's come on down to the next example. I'll make a note of what you see down here in bold. Some polynomials cannot be factored, and if they cannot be factored, they're referred to as being prime. I'll come down and look at example 4, part A with you. All right, so it says factoring, and just by looking at it, you don't necessarily know that it's going to be prime or not. Okay, so but you still, make sure it's in descending order. Ask yourself if it has a common factor. So it is in descending order, no common factor. So I'm ready to go to my guess and check. The only way to multiply to give me x squared, x and x. The only way to multiply to give me 1, 1 and 1. Then you check your outside and inside. So outside and inside, I'm getting 1x in both cases. My goal is trying to get that middle term, which is that 7x. Is there any way out of 2 1s I'm going to be able to get a 7? No, and like we said from the top, the only way to multiply to give you x squared is x and x. The only way to multiply to give you 1 is 1 and 1. There are no other options. And so after you've exhausted all of the options, then that's when you can say that it's prime. Okay. All right, I'll let you try letter B. Moving on down to example 5, I'm going to do again in example 5, I'm going to do the left-hand column and let you try the right-hand column. These just say factor your trinomial, and I'm just reminding you here, don't forget to pull out your common factor if there is one. So if I am factoring here, I'm in descending order. Does it have a common factor? 3, 7, and 20? Nope. So I'm ready to go to my guess and check. The only way to multiply to give me 3a squared, 3x squared, excuse me, 3x times x. Most common way to multiply to give you 20. If you agree, that's a 4 times 5. So let's see, let's put 4 in the back and 5 in the front. Check your outside and inside. So on the outside, I've got 12x. Inside, I've got 5x. My goal is a positive 7x. And I can get that positive 7x by making that 5 negative. So this is where I'm getting 5. So minus, plus, and then check at the end. Negative 5 times 4 gives you that negative 20. All right, let's move on down to the one below it. This one, you know, don't let the descending order trip you up. This one's in descending order according to my A's because I have 2A, 1A, no A's. Okay, so it is in descending order. Does it have a common factor? And like the first two terms have an A in common, but then the last term doesn't have it. And the last two terms have a B in common, but the first term doesn't have a B. So there is no common factor. We're ready then to guess and check. The only way to multiply to give you 2A squared, 2A times A. All right, so now let's think about the most common way to multiply to give us 12. Maybe 3 times 4, maybe try that. All right, so let's say, and I'm trying to, since it's b squared, so I'm going to do a 3b and a 4b. Check my outside and inside. So on the outside, 2 times 4, I have 8ab. Inside, I have 3b times a, so 3ab. My goal is a negative 11ab. I can get that. I'd have to make them both negative, so minus, minus. And then it checks at the end, negative 3 times negative 4. Sure enough, it's going to give me that positive 12. And of course, I've got my b times b, so that's my b squared. That's my final answer. Okay. All right, lastly, down here in part E that we'll do here together, it's in descending order, right? X squared, x, no x's. Do all three of those terms have something in common? If you agree, they do, right? They all have a 5 in common. And this is where we talked about in the last section. They all have a negative in common as well. Plus, factoring is so much easier when your first leading term is positive. So let's pull out a negative 5. So essentially, I'm going to go through and divide everything by negative 5. So negative 15 divided by negative 5, that's going to leave me with a positive 3x squared. Negative 10 divided by negative 5, so a positive 2x. Negative 20 divided by negative 5, positive 4. Okay. Now from here, all right, let's see if we can go any further. All right, so we start guess and check. The only way to multiply to give you 3x squared, 3x times x. You've got 2 ways to multiply to give you 4, right? 2 times 2 and 4 times 1. So let's say we go with 2 and 2. So 2 and 2. So you check your outside and inside. So on the outside, I got 6x. Inside, I've got 2x. My goal is this middle term, so my goal is a 2x. If I add them or subtract them, I'm not going to be able to get a 2. And swapping 2 and 2 isn't going to do me any good. So 2 and 2 is not working. The only other option then is going to be 1 and 4. So let's say we put 1 in the front, 4 in the back. All right, so now outside 3 times 4, 12x. Inside 1 times x. My goal is still a 2. So 12 and 1 is adding and subtracting is not going to give me a 2. So therefore, again, don't completely scrap that one. Let's swap it. Let's put 4 in the front and 1 in the back. One last check here. Outside, 3x. Inside, 4x. My goal is to get a 2. Can't quite get there either, right? Adding and you get 7, subtracting you get a 1. So what that means then is this original factoring, it's not prime because we were able to pull out a negative 5. I just can't go any further. So I'm just going to just take a little, just mark all of that out. This is as far as we can go. We were able to pull out the negative 5. I couldn't factor any further. We exhausted all of the possibilities. But again, it's not prime because I was able to pull out the negative 5. Okay. If I hadn't been able to pull out the negative 5, then I would have been prime. Okay. All right. That finishes up this section. Thanks a lot. Bye.